Mm-hmm.
You know, when people talk about Neville, they always start with that legendary line.
You were in Barbados.
Exactly. It's got this incredible mystique, this power of conviction. But I think if you only focus on the story, you know, the magic ticket, the ship, the happy ending.
You're missing the point.
Right. You're treating it like a nice visualization story, but you're missing the actual architecture underneath it all.
That's the critical distinction. So many people remember let's call it the theater of the stories, the drama, the sudden solutions. They see the result, but they miss the mechanism.
And the sources we're looking at call this mechanism the invisible curriculum.
Yes. The 5 non-negotiable laws of statecraft that Abdullah taught Neville. Things he had to practice every single day to fundamentally reshape his reality.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going beyond the anecdotes to really uncover those 5 laws, because they aren't just clever tricks, are they?
Not at all. They're the core mechanics that show how Neville went from being, you know, a frustrated seeker to a true mystic architect. This is true statecraft.
Okay. Let's jump right in with Law 1. This one is, well, it's probably the most radical.
It is. It asks you to completely discard wishful thinking. People think manifestation is about feeling good or, you know, hoping for the best. Abdullah taught something much more severe.
A core law being, when the end is chosen, the middle becomes irrelevant.
Right.
I mean, that's just a staggering shift in how you see the world. It means all the logistics, all the how-tos, it just evaporates the moment you make that metaphysical decision.
It does. And look at the Barbados example. When Neville came to Abdullah, he was completely stuck in the middle.
I don't have the money. I don't have a ticket.
All the problems.
Mm.
And Abdullah just, you know, he didn't engage with any of it. He ignored the lack, the circumstances. He went straight to the end and fixed it there.
He didn't say, you'll get a tippet soon, or let's hope. He said, you are in Barbados. Present tense. Done.
Exactly. It's declaration, never hope. Hope, you see, it implies a distance between you and your goal, a gap.
Whereas declaration just collapses that distance.
It collapses it completely. You're no longer chasing a possibility. You're inhabiting a reality.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just mysticism. The sources we've seen link this to modern neuroscience, to something called predictive coding.
That's a very powerful connection.
Yeah.
Predictive coding suggests the brain is essentially an anticipation machine.
Okay.
So once you assume an end state like, I am in Barbados, and you assume it as a deep, undeniable fact, your brain becomes loyal to that new reality.
So it stops trying to justify the old reality in New York.
It stops trying to maintain the old state, and instead uses all its energy to minimize the prediction error between the chosen state, Barbados, and what your senses are telling you.
So the brain is actively working to make the outside world match the inside one.
Right. Which means that famous Neville line, I did nothing, the assumption worked. It suddenly makes perfect mechanical sense.
He didn't have to push the world.
No, the world had to move to reflect him. But, and this is the hard part, maintaining that state, that takes incredible discipline. And that brings us to laws 2 and 3.
Okay, Law 2. This is all about discipline, and this is where you really see Abdullah's personality come through. The law is never revisit the old state.
Zero tolerance.
Yeah, and people often mistake this for him just being, you know, moody or temperamental.
But the sources say it was a kind of violent spiritual precision. Remember the story where Neville, full of doubt, goes back to ask for help?
And Abdullah just slams the door in his face.
Shouting, I have said you are in Barbados, do not ask me again.
That harshness, that zero tolerance. It wasn't personal, was it? There was a reason for it.
The danger is literal. The subconscious mind is literal. So if you keep revisiting the state of being broke, of being stuck, even just to question it for a second,
You bring it back to life.
you resurrect that old identity.
Yeah.
You're actively uncreating the reality you just declared.
And that's, I mean, that is the universal trap, isn't it? For anyone trying to do this today, we choose an end, but then we spend, what, 80% of the day checking?
Checking for evidence, scrolling our phones, analyzing everything.
Emotionally, we just keep slipping back into the identity of the person who doesn't have it yet.
It's a constant psychological double-dipping. Abdullah trained Neville to remain faithful. You're not allowed to move in and out of the state of the wish fulfilled. You stay there until it hardens into fact.
But how? How do you maintain that state when everything you see, everything you hear is telling you you're wrong?
Okay.
That brings us to Law 3.
Law 3, operating above the senses. Abdullah's point was that your 5 senses, which you see, hear, touch right now, are only reporting the past.
They're an echo, an old hologram of your previous assumptions.
Exactly. They're yesterday's news. So if you rely on them for your truth, you are forever trapped in the loop.
And that's why when Neville brought up the problem, but I don't have the money for a ticket, Abdullah didn't try to solve that problem.
He just dismissed it completely. He knew the lack of money was just outdated information. It was a reflection of a state of consciousness Neville was no longer supposed to be in.
Now, here's a question, because I think a lot of people will be asking this. Is this just delusion? If I ignore my senses telling me I can't pay my rent, am I being mystical or just irresponsible?
And that is the most important question. Abdullah wasn't teaching irresponsibility. He was teaching prioritization.
So prioritizing cause over effect.
Exactly. Your 3D facts are not the final authority. They are just a scoreboard of past choices. If you believe them, you're prioritizing the effect. Abdullah's only ever focused on the cause.
The internal state. So the training wasn't about denying that reality exists.
No, it was about denying its authority over your chosen state. The training was to override the facts.
To let your imagination of holding the ticket feel more real than your empty wallet.
Neville summed it up perfectly later in his life. Imagination trumps fact. You rely on the state you chose in Law 1, and you let the senses be the lagging indicator.
Which is the perfect lead-in to Law 4. This is the mechanism that gives you the power to do that override. It's treating imagination as law.
Right. We've all heard the phrase, imagination creates reality. But for Abdullah, it wasn't just a creative tool you use sometimes. It was law, with a capital L.
The root operating system.
It's the first cause. It's the fundamental reality, not something you use to try and change reality.
That's a huge distinction. Most people visualize to try to get something. They hope it works.
And that's the difference. Visualization is optional. The law is not. Abdullah taught that imagination is the actual substance behind matter. It instructs everything. It bends time with the same precision as gravity.
So if you treat it like an optional tool,
you get weak, sporadic results. The commitment changes the intensity. It's the difference between lighting a little candle in a dark room and, flipping the main breaker for your entire life.
And that level of commitment, that absolute power, is what makes Law 5 possible.
Law 5, the finished argument.
And this one is so often overlooked, but it might be the deepest teaching of all.
It really might be. The finished argument is that deep inner conviction that the event has already happened.
So the goal isn't a possibility you're looking forward to anymore.
No. It's a concrete memory you're looking back on.
The state of total completion. So you surrender the middle because it's already done. You stop praying to receive something.
You start giving thanks for having received it. But this isn't just an intellectual nod. It's an emotional saturation.
So what does that actually feel like? How is the feeling of a memory different from the feeling of hope?
Hope still has tension. It has a void that needs to be filled. Memory is just settled. There's a satisfaction, a certainty.
Like thinking about a vacation you took last year. You're not worried about the plane ticket.
Exactly. You just know what happened. The finished argument is applying that same calm certainty to your desire. Nothing your senses tell you can contradict that finished memory.
And you can see this in other teachings, Joseph Murphy, the Kabbalion. But for Abdullah, it was just right there in the declaration. You are in Barbados. It was a finished argument spoken as truth.
He taught Neville to inhabit reality from a place of completion, of abundance, never from longing.
So we've got the 5 laws: end logic, never revisiting, operating above the senses, imagination as law, and the finished argument. When someone actually applies all of this, what happens? What are the observable results?
The whole game changes. You shift from trying to causing. And the sources lay out 5 clear things that happen.
Okay.
First, your identity shifts before your circumstances do. That internal decision you made in Law 1 creates a new you, and your subconscious becomes loyal to that new self.
Second, and this is where it feels like magic time bends.
Things that should logically take months, like finding a spot on a fully booked ship, suddenly collapse into days. Reality has to reorganize to catch up with the state you're now in.
Third, reality reorganizes without effort. You aren't manipulating things anymore.
Right. The solution just arrives. The ticket Neville couldn't afford was simply given to him. Events just conform.
Fourth, the people around you start playing new roles that reflect your new identity.
Yes, new alliances form. Old conflicts just seem to dissolve because they belong to the old you.
And finally, your life stops feeling like you're applying all these techniques.
It just feels like causation. You move from being the effect to being the cause, the architect. That is statecraft.
So if we were to boil this all down into a quick start guide, Abdullah style, what are the takeaways?
It's about fiercely choosing the inner world over the outer evidence. So Choose the end. Reject the middle. Stop checking for evidence. Don't revisit the old state no matter how much you want to.
Ignore the senses.
Completely. They're just the loading screen of the past. Treat imagination not as a nice little tool, but as absolute law. And, most important, enter the finished argument. Feel your desire as a settled memory.
He wasn't a motivational speaker. He was installing an operating system.
Absolutely. He was a mystic transmitter.
Yeah.
Neville learned through osmosis because Abdullah didn't just believe this stuff, he knew it. He knew reality was malleable and imagination was its architect.
This whole deep dive really shifts the understanding from simple visualization to something much more profound. It's sophisticated identity-level causation.
It really is. It makes you rethink everything you accept as a fact.
It does.
So let me just leave you with this one thought, building on that idea of the finished argument. If your goal has already become a concrete memory, what past memory are your current senses reporting to you right now? And what are you daring to completely ignore, to stay faithful to the truth you've already declared?
An excellent point to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of imagination. We'll see you next time.